organisation. So Himalayan Trust is a small organisation with big goals, much like Ed Tenzing in 53. And so the achievements outlined by Hassan and Lakba would not be possible without that partnership. So since our AGM a year ago, a lot has changed in the New Zealand operation. Charitable donations within the non-profit sector have been on quite a dramatic decline due to a sort of constrained economy. And we have seen this as well within the Himalayan Trust, but there's also been some great successes too. We've been responding to a really strong interest in the Himalayan Trust's work, and we've taken the opportunity to focus on our communications and our organisational systems and processes. So one of the sort of big directives from the board has been to achieve a leaner organisation, an organisation that's more effective. So we've focused on that a lot over the past couple of months, making our donation process easier. We've focused on focusing our communications online, so it's simple for people to understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, how people can get involved and support. We've made huge progress with our receipting process. That was a hugely time-consuming drain on the New Zealand operations, managing receipts and managing donations. So we've automated a lot of that, which has freed up a lot of time for our small team. And we're also cutting down on subscriptions and operational support costs in quite a big way, so that's really, really helped. Good, other way. So one thing the board we've discussed at length is balancing the supporter base. So we have the importance of developing that younger audience to secure the future of the Himalayan Trust. So our two sort of flagship campaigns that have really stood out as strong assets to the Himalayan Trust is Everest Day and Summit Challenge. So Summit Challenge was quite successful this year. We raised $120,000, engaged a lot of people, over 400 people, and a lot of them were young, very active on social media. It created a really strong community. So that's what we're trying to use that Summit Challenge campaign to develop our younger audiences. Whereas Everest Day we're using as sort of really a vehicle to tell the mission and the story of the Himalayan Trust, expanding our audience, particularly into sort of donation-able audiences. We also ran a Christmas appeal last year, and we made Christmas cards, which was received really, really well. And we're actually doing these again this year if you're looking for a Christmas gift. But these sort of gifts have been a really valuable tool for us as an alternative to just cash giving, creating objects that can be an alternative to donations. And this is becoming increasingly important for younger audiences who are sort of actually moving to direct giving as opposed to charitable giving. We've also made some great progress with an online shop, of which the likes of Mike Guild, his books are on there, and also my father, Peter's new book, 40 Acts and a Yeti, among other things. So that's actually essential reading. So that's actually generated over $7,000 in sales in the last year, and it's increasing. I think we've done over that already in the first couple of months. So the products on the store are either at nearly no cost to the Himalayan Trust or heavily discounted. So this has been sort of a growing avenue for fundraising as well. But to talk more about our two other main fundraising campaigns that I touched on before, I'd like to invite our marketing manager and sort of Himalayan Trust Swiss Army knife, Casey, to talk a bit more about that. Casey.
Thank you, first of all, to everyone for your wonderful reports that you've given us. It's always so insightful hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Alex has done a great job. You know, as you may or may not be aware, our operational team earlier this year went from 4 down to 2 people. We really are leaning up. But we're finding that we're managing pretty well as a dynamic duo, backed by a wonderful board, very supportive board. So to that end, we're looking at fundraising dynamically and how we can connect with new audiences, better serve our existing loyal audiences, and you know, through Everest Day in particular, you know, connect with every New Zealander. Those classic Kiwi values that get exemplified. Summer Challenge is my personal favourite time of the year. Runs from the 1st to the 31st of March, and the premise is simple. You run, walk or bike up the height of Everest, and you raise funds for the Himalayan Trust while you do it. Living in central Otago, that's myself, my partner Tessa there, running on Roy's Peak in Wanaka. It's a great place to do it. It's a little bit harder if you're vertically challenged living in a place like Hamilton, for example. So, you know, we're really excited for where Summer Challenge is going. This year was our most effective year so far. We had 450 individuals and teams sign up, and together we raised over $111,000, which admittedly was only 20 grand more than the year beforehand, but given what was happening in Ukraine at the time, it was a really challenging fundraising environment as inflationary pressures were increasing. You know, all charities were having a hard time. So with that kind of being said, seeing around about $200 per fundraiser raised, we were really impressed. And the key thing about that is that we actually had, of those 450 people, more than half of them were people who had never come across the Himalayan Trust before. So we're really connecting with new audiences. And these are people who have now signed up to our email list. They know that we're having an AGM at the moment because we emailed them last week and told them so. We didn't send them an invite because that's members only. You special vote. One of the things key to Summer Challenge's success is these leaderboards which we have on the site. So it gets a little bit competitive. We've got the vertical meters leaderboards here, and then the fundraising leaderboards, and both of them got pretty hotly contested. Pretty well. Took the cake. And then there were a few crazy people here. I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurred, but Nathan Lungley, who ranked first there, he and Gavin had a battle that lasted. They both live in Wanaka, and they both were going up and down Mount Roy, which is around 1,600 metres tall. It takes a quick person 2 hours to go up and down. And they were averaging that twice a day, every day, for 31 days straight. That's 4 hours of hill slogging. It's admirable to think what they achieved. They both had some pretty remarkable fundraising come out of that. Gavin, for example, after Summer Challenge went, he took his young daughter to Solakumbu. Unfortunately got COVID while they were there, but you know, took her on a tour of what the schools were like, and he's since started the fundraiser completely separate to this, raising money for us. So we see this as a great vehicle to bring people into the trust. We all together climbed 2.1 vertical, well, 2.1 million vertical meters, which is sort of scary to contemplate. But it's, yeah, again, my favourite time of year. We hosted a number of in-person events, which, in the context of what was happening in New Zealand back in March, a number of sort of races and these types of events had been cancelled, and I think the outdoors community, and particularly the runners, were really hungry to meet up with other people and have fun, you know, take on a challenge that you could do on your own or as a community. So looking to the future, we're actually going to be really focusing on these events, delivering more of them across the country in the different regions, to enable really community to come together, to find like-minded people who also care. So for 2023, it's kind of a bit scary putting a number out there in front of all of you guys as a goal, but I'd like to see us hit 1,000 fundraisers. Yes, that's more than double. That would be doubling several years in a row, which is pretty scary to say, but I think we can do it. We've got some great partners on board, and we're working at developing a broader network of ambassadors. As I mentioned earlier, you know, broadening our series of events. I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful year.
So, just bottom line about the campaign message. Okay,
Essentially, as you may have seen from that video of myself and my partner running, we had videos for hikers, videos for runners, videos for bikers, and while they were great at convincing someone to take on a physical challenge, part of the reason we're now heading over to Nepal next month is to capture relevant and contemporary content from the projects that we're supporting. So this is a great group signing up people who are really interested in up hills, but people who are interested in running up hills and fundraising is the goal. So we're going to bring in that stronger message of what we do and what people are actually fundraising for.
Casey, just one thought I had then as you were talking about doubling the numbers was we've got 450 people completed this year, so bring them 8 next year.
Exactly. We'll give them a free t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It's
is
not
coming up in
it's
December.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you sign up early, then
Yeah.
But Casey, it's not just for the young.
no.
I managed to
You
haul
did pretty
myself
well yourself
up,
at all.
yeah, to the
Yeah.
South Pole, the equivalent of the South Pole. So I'd like to see more of my age group out there.
I've got a bike.
Experience.
I've got a bike.
Can I bring my hot
So bouncing back to those leaderboards we had there. So last year we had the top 10 for the whole challenge. So that was reserved for, you know, the freaks who were doing that much virtual. People who had 4 hours a day to go and exercise. What we're going to do this year, or next year rather, is actually to break down the leaderboards into smaller segments so that you can compete against people in your region, or people who have chosen the same exercise goal as you, or people who have chosen the same fundraising goal as you. So you're kind of comparing apples and apples, and that'll allow, I think, for a much healthier level of competition. So we're looking forward to trying to make what has become a really fun and competitive challenge just a bit more inclusive. So while I might personally sit on that slightly extreme side, I recognise that not all of our audience does, and if we want to hit 1,000 fundraisers, we're going to have to cater to everyone. Yeah. Moving on to Everest Day, this is where, you know, we've got some challenge targeting the outdoorsy types, the mountain lovers. Everest Day aims to connect with your everyday New Zealander. You know, those classic Kiwi values of hard work, of kindness, you know, these are real simple values, and that's where a Fiver for Ed comes in. So we ran a campaign with this simple video. So this year, Everest Day, I have to say, was not our strongest year. Its inaugural year, the year before, when we had Tim Kay running with us, it was his brainchild in a sense, and he'd connected with a large network of ambassadors in schools and raised close to $100,000. So Alexander and I were a little disappointed when these were the numbers we got to at the end of the campaign. As I say, it was still a challenging fundraising environment, but we are looking to the future as to how we can do better, especially considering that next year is the 70th anniversary and that we really don't want that to be a flop. So looking forward, we are going to try and exemplify, you know, and connect more strongly with our network of ambassadors. We've got a huge range of New Zealand celebrities and politicians who have been very happy to take these kind of photos for us and allow us to share them on social media. But we feel we haven't leveraged them to their fullest extent yet. People like Sam Neill, for example, he's a great advocate of ours. He shared that photo on his Instagram page, and we still to this day continue to receive likes of it. We don't necessarily have measurement as to whether that's brought in donations, but we're sure that it is spreading the word. So we're looking forward to brainstorming how we can take this campaign to another level. And I think one of the biggest areas for improvement is connecting with schools and workplaces. So we do have a number of corporates in New Zealand with whom we've already got strong connections, and that's the part of, you know, expanding our board comes in, because we've got, you know, people with a wealth of experience and great networks and connections that we hope will enable us to take a campaign like this and really turn it into an iconic annual fundraiser. It's something we'd really like to see done. One of the things that, of course, is probably near to all of your hearts is membership. And over the last couple of years, I've been working with the Himalayan Trust officially for a bit over a year now, but sort of unofficially 2 years-ish. And the membership program is one thing that kind of gets kicked around pretty often. We're looking at how we can really maximise value to our members. One of the things we noticed as we were fielding membership applications, sending them out to the board members for approval, was that it was a pretty clunky process. So as Alex has dived into, we've been, or brushed over rather, I'll just dive into this section. We've been trying to streamline some of our processes and make them in some ways more automated, in some ways more personal. So the membership, for example, we now have a recurring annual billing thing where you put in your credit card details, it'll store you in our database as a member, and then we don't have to send you an invoice in a year's time to double check if you're still a member or maybe you slipped through the cracks this way. You're guaranteed you've got your membership sorted because it'll just bill your credit card come that date. Or if it can tell that your credit card's going to expire, it'll send you an email and say, hey, your card's expiring. If you don't want your membership to lapse, please do this. And so we're looking to improve a number of our systems internally in order to deliver a better donor experience. Mail-by-runner is one of the things that we're really excited about. I'm not sure how, I can't show of hands of who subscribes to our mail-by-runner newsletter. Oh, that's pretty good. Nice. What do you think?
Yeah, that's good.
I like it too, it's really fun. I particularly love this illustration. So it's in its 55th, actually this is your section, isn't it, Alex?
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, I've got a
Just
different
about
range
speech
on
notes.
seeing it's the 70th anniversary. You could have one which is called Do You Remember? For all of those over 70.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Get it? Over 70?
That's a bit of fun.
Yeah, so for Mail-by-Runner, we've now grown to 330 subscribers, and we have a really strong open rate, which is really wonderful. People are very engaged with sort of what's going on over that newsletter. And actually, if you have anything you'd like to share, a story from Nepal, a piece of history, or something exciting that you'd like to share with membership, please share it with us. But then, we'll go on and talk a bit about regular giving, but I think I'll leave this to Jason. So, yeah, Jason, I'd like to welcome you up to to do your finance report.
Thank you, Ernest. So Jason Edwards, seen most of you before. It's great to be back face to face, to be honest, but also very humbling once you've heard all the great work that the team in New Zealand and Nepal are doing, the great outcomes. And then at the end of the night I have to come up here and talk about boring stuff like numbers and accounting, okay? So I'm going to try to whip through it in about 5 minutes.
Sorry, yeah, you're pointing down.
Okay, so, and by the way, at the back of the room there was the annual report, and that does include some pie charts and a summary of the financial information. Fairly shortly, up in the Charity Services website will be the full-on 20-page financials for those who suffer insomnia or something similar. But we'll summarise it at a high level here. So in terms of the highlights, I guess obviously the key supporters from NZ Impact for the aid program. And as discussed last year, that support goes all the way through to July 2025, and it's worth about $385,000 a year. So that's obviously essential, particularly in the very challenging environment that we've talked about and we've heard about today. And probably that challenges come in 3 aspects. Number 1 was definitely COVID and the lockdowns, which hopefully we've seen the back of, but obviously that did have a large impact on fundraising in New Zealand, as we've heard, and also obviously challenges with the projects in Nepal. Number 2 challenge really is that we've got a variety of donors, and the team's worked extremely hard to secure those, but quite rightly in the environment we're in, the accountability required and the reporting and the monitoring of the spend increases every year. So that's a big focus, I know, of the team and the board, to be efficient, to be effective, and to be accountable. And number 3, really in the last 6 months, unless you've been living under a rock, obviously the investment markets have been rather uncertain, shall we say. So whether it's the war in Ukraine, it's the price of oil, it's inflation, it's the shambles in the UK, etc. The investment markets have not been kind. And we'll soon see that that has had a bit of an impact on the trust. Final just item on just to finish off is that this week, in fact, the auditors, so all our financial information is independently audited, as it's required to be for the Charities Commission, so that audit completed just this last week. So all these numbers we're about to talk through have all been, got a clean opinion and signed off as being complete and accurate, if you like. Importantly, they also actually look at non-financial information these days. So they don't just focus on the balance sheet and the profit and loss. They also are required to give an opinion on what we call the statement of service performance, i.e. all those great things that you heard about today. Our accounts include a summary version of those outputs, and the auditors review the evidence associated with those.
Jason, how important is that to MFAT in terms of its ongoing funding?
Yeah, no, very important. So we report every year to MFAT, and you basically have to talk about actual spend, what you've achieved in terms of outcome, what the budget is going forward, any over or under spend, and what you're going to do about it. So yeah, very important, but they're also very responsive.
Being very lenient in the wake of COVID as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they did extend the program by another 6 months to help us out. This is just a graphical representation of where the money comes from. So the revenue for the year was around $900,000, and as I say, just under 40% comes from MFAT. Donations and bequests were 16%. The Everest Day is included under events income. As Casey said, that was slightly down from the prior year, being the second year of Everest Day, but still a good result. Summer Challenge really did go up quite a bit, and 15% of income came through the Summer Challenge. That does include the brother or sister of Summer Challenge, which is the Descent Challenge, which we didn't directly touch on today, but it's like the opposite.
What goes up must come down.
Exactly. What else? So we do get some, obviously, interest and dividends from investments. This is where the money goes. So we talked about today we talked about the quality education program. That, as we heard about, covers literacy improvement, teacher training, scholarships, infrastructure and classroom support, community engagement. There was PPE and etc. Money for PPE for COVID. HTNZ has signed up to fund Kunde Hospital for about 40% of their costs through to end of 2023. Volunteer and employee related costs. As I say, we started the year with 4 staff. It's now a pretty lean machine at the end of the year with Alex as the GM and Casey in marketing. And other expenses up the top, that includes everything else. That's the costs of delivering the Summer Challenge, etc. It's all the marketing and communications. Unfortunately, the banks and what have you and the electronic transaction platforms do take their fees out of that, and it includes accounting and IT. This is the financial position a summary of the financial position of the trust. So the net assets is $4 million. So that's effectively how many assets versus liabilities the trust has, and it's been relatively consistent, goes up and down a little bit. That's predominantly represented by investments of $3.9 million. That is in a moderately conservative portfolio with bonds and equities and property funds. But as I say, it has been a challenging year. And so I guess the bad news in terms of the investments is that there was a loss on investments during the year. Obviously, what we call an unrealized loss in the accounting game, i.e. it's a paper loss at the moment because the investments are still held, but the market value of those investments have gone down. Just like if you've been brave enough to look at your KiwiSaver funds or something similar, you would have seen your balance has gone down, but over time, hopefully, it returns. So there was a loss of about $500,000 on the investment portfolio during the year. As I say, unrealized, and certainly it's been, since year-end June, it's been pretty flat. There's been no further losses. By way of some context, I did go back and look at the last 5 years, because we've always been very successful with our investments. In the last 5 years, for example, the gains on investment were $1.2 million. And in fact, if you go back a couple more years more than that, if you go 6 years, it was $1.5 million. Pretty much every year has been a pretty good return on investments. It was break even in at the year ended June 2020, which was the shock of COVID and the uncertainty in the markets. So it break even that year. So this has been pretty much the first loss for quite a while, right? But still disappointing, and obviously all indications are, and all hope is that the markets sort themselves out and start reversing, as should happen on a medium to long-term basis. As we mentioned, the MFAD arrangements, we have received cash in the bank, funding all the way up to October 2023, and obviously there's the contract for the remaining up to July 2025. And there are just some tagged funds in the balance sheet, so there's still about $40,000 in the balance sheet, which is tagged for the avalanche spend to help those kids who were effectively orphaned. Financial performance, so there was an operating loss. Operating loss is the loss before the investment change in the fair value of investments. There was an operating loss of just over $100,000. Revenue was $0.9 million. There's the MFAD amount there. Donations and bequests, and as I say, Summit and the Sin Challenge, 136 grand. Expenditure was $1 million. That was up a little bit from previous years. That was mainly in the quality education line. And that was largely due to, to be honest, that was largely due to timing, i.e. There's a 5.5-year program now. There were delays in the closing down in terms of what they could do in the first couple of years. So it's starting to ramp up in terms of timing. But just like we have a contract with MFAT for the 5.5 years, we've got a back-and-back agreement with Mingma and his team so that they know exactly how much funding they get, and we know how much we're spending, etc. And so just to finish off then, as I say, the revenue was $900,000, the expenditure was $1 million, being a loss of $100,000 at the operating level. And then the investments, as I talked about, there was a loss in the fair value of the investments, an unrealized loss of $527,000, which was the reduction in the investment portfolio.
which meant that the bottom line loss was obviously a bit more significant. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I will hand back to Alex.
Very clear.
Not necessarily good news, but
Basically, about a 12% contraction in investment, isn't it?
say that again.
About a 12% contraction in investments, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But as I say, I did the exercise of going back effectively 10 years, to be honest. And there was only one other year we were pretty much break even, which was 2020, with COVID. And this is the first year of any significant loss. So, was disappointing. Overall, as I say, if you go back 6 or so years, we're still well north of $1 million up. So, let us hope.
Where's the expenditure for running the trust in New Zealand?
Yep. So this is probably, obviously there's full detail in the full financial statements, happy to provide, but this is probably, this represents $1 million of expenditure, effectively. This is quality education program, COVID, community hospital. This is the program management and monitoring in Nepal. This is effectively the employment costs in New Zealand, audit fees, depreciation, and as I say, the other expenses of the 9%. So effectively, the main New Zealand expenses obviously are the staff, and then there's the other expenses up there, which includes everything from, as I say, bank fees, the platform fees, marketing, the summer challenge costs, IT, etc. Yeah, and there is a full detail, and as I say, on the full accounts. Was there one other question I saw?
Yeah, obviously MFAT is a major donor. Is there an expectation that with a lead time that we will renegotiate that, or is there an indication that they will be able to support ongoing another project in a similar size and nature?
Certainly in my involvement over 10, 15 years, there's always been a really good relationship and strong bond. And I know Peter and Mike certainly have those relationships now. And Himalayan Trust seems, for good reason, has a special place within that, I think. And whilst there is an interesting charity environment, because there is some thinking that if you've got a lot of reserves, for example, maybe you don't need as much funding, right? I personally don't subscribe to that theory, because you should encourage prudent, conservative management. But I think that all indications as far as the Himalayan Trust is that it has got a great relationship, a great legacy with Sir Ed, great support at the highest level politically. So I don't think there's, my personal view, I don't think there's any real risk there.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we get to the end of the program, we'll keep having those relationships. We report every year and do a big report at the end. And in fact, a couple of times they've sent people to actually monitor and look at the actual results themselves. It's always been very successful.
Jason, given the comments that Alex and Casey have been making about being lean and mean machines, are you expecting that 23% to shrink as a portion of expenditure for the next financial year?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for the bulk of this year just gone, the 12 months to 30 June, we actually had 4 employees. Yeah. Certainly, so there was Tim as the fundraising manager, there was admin communication support, etc. So now we're down to both Alex and Casey, who are doing the work of many persons. So yeah, that number should come down. Yeah. Yep. Alex.
Yeah, then I actually met with our partnerships manager at MFAT yesterday, and she actually has history in Nepal and a very strong interest, and there's strong interest from MFAT all around. I think the only concern that has been expressed from their side is governmental changes and funding for MFAT partnerships itself. So that would be interesting to see how that manifests. But the last item on the list today is there was an election for new board members this year, so I'd like to ask Dad to come up and talk about these newly elected board members.
Thank you. Yes, so we ended up for the last couple of years, the number of people on the board reduced a little bit. We had 5 board members, and we of course had room within our constitution for 8. Some people had run out of their time as per the constitution, had to be rotated. So we had the election, and we're really delighted at the results. So Faringi over here is now a board member of Himalayan Trust. Bruce Arrow, who's also here, is we have David Simons, who's down in Christchurch, who, along with Jim Strang and others, was watching it, and then something happened and it went offline. So we'll have to give him a call and say thank you personally. Kirsten Nicholson, I think she's still in Wellington, isn't it? And she's joined us. And Emma Hayden, who is in Perth, is also a member of the Himalayan Trust, the new board. Yeah, and tomorrow we have our first Himalayan Trust board meeting with our new board, and also a couple of the members of the previous board will be there, along with our members from Himalayan Trust Nepal. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the formalities for the AGM today. So we've got, I think most people here are joining us for dinner at Everest Dine on Parnell Rise. Really looking forward to having everyone there. Does everyone know where Everest Dine is in Parnell? Okay, so there's parking available on the street and on the side streets. There's also